Hello everyone, today is a really exciting day because we get to meet Charlie, who has done BirthBox. And this is actually the second mum that I've met in person that has done the digital program. So it's actually quite surreal. She has got her daughter in her arms, and would you believe it? There is another one over there with Dad. Let's start by hearing about yourself.
My name is Charlie. I am nearly 38 and these are my second and third daughters. So I've actually done BirthBox twice. The first time with my first daughter, who's coming up 2.5, and then with these twins who are 8 weeks. And actually, the BirthBox has turned me into a bit of a birth nerd,
Oh my gosh,
which is great.
You got the bug.
I've got the bug. 100% got the bug.
Yeah.
I found BirthBox via Poppy's Instagram. And I listened to the podcasts and all of that stuff as well, sort of alongside just inhaling the information. And it just made such a difference to the birth experience, especially the second time. The first time I don't know if you remember, but it was right towards the end of my pregnancy that I got BirthBox. I'd done a different hypnobirthing program and I hadn't felt that it had really touched all the areas that I wanted it to touch on. The biggest one for me was reframing pain.
Yes.
And having that understanding of pain. I couldn't get into my head this idea of breathing the baby out and it not hurting. I was like, it must hurt. I think I saw some things of yours that talked about that, and I hadn't really seen that talked about anywhere else. And I think that's one of the things that led me to getting the program, and I whizzed through it very quickly and loved it and found it super, super helpful.
That's so interesting you say that, because with my first daughter, Juniper, I felt the same. I did a traditional hypnobirthing course and I just felt like I'm not prepared.
Yeah.
I don't feel prepared. And it's because there's a big elephant in the room, isn't there? Pain is at the heart of the whole thing with childbirth, you know, it literally is the biggest fear.
And with my first, actually, I ended up having a really long and relatively painful early labour phase of contractions at home, because unbeknown to me, she turned and she was in my back and I was getting these back contractions, which I hadn't really understood to be a thing. And the only thing that got me through the pain was things that I'd learned in BirthBox, like using my birthing comb, breathing, having like meditations and all of that sort of stuff. I remember you talking about running a marathon and exercise and endurance, and how that's like a healthy, useful pain that you push through, but there's something that you get something from it at the end. And that's the thing on both my labours, actually, that I found the most important takeaway.
Wow.
Pain isn't necessarily a bad thing. You won't get more pain than your body can handle.
Tell us a bit more about your first birth.
So my first birth was actually quite textbook. We had a really lovely, healthy pregnancy. Hilariously to me, because I'd done so much research on avoiding induction because I didn't want one, went into labour on my due date, which never happens. I did. I did on my due date.
5%.
I had the quite traditional way, lost my mucus plug and started to get contractions. I laboured in the bath for quite a while. In hindsight, I got in the bath far too early because I kind of used that tool a bit quick. But laboured in the bath, listening to meditations and sort of hypnobirthing tools and things from BirthBox. And then we went into the hospital. We were in the pool, which was what I wanted to water birth. So I was in the pool and I really felt the urge to push. And I'd actually had a vaginal examination, which again, I originally wasn't going to do, but in the moment I felt like it was the right thing to do to have one. Yeah. So I had this vaginal examination, and then I was, I think, around 4 or 5 centimetres. And very quickly I felt the urge to push after that. And in my head I was going, well, it can't be time. It can't be time because this examination told me it's not time yet. I knew, my logical brain knew that's not the case, but obviously you're not in your logical brain in that moment when you're birthing. So I did get out the pool and had a check, and I was 10 centimetres and I could have pushed, but I'd kind of zoned myself out of it then. So I had to get back in. So we got up and my husband was there, had my arms around him. We were dancing to music, swaying. And actually I found that to be better than the pool, the movement, and moving my hips and just, really enjoying movement to music. And then unfortunately we started to get a little bit of dips on the monitoring and ended up, long story short, we ended up on the bed, which wasn't the ideal scenario for us, with a ventouse and a episiotomy, which was, it was the right thing in the time. But in hindsight, I think if I had been a little bit more strong and confident then, as I am now, I probably wouldn't have ended up with that. I think I would have pushed back a little bit more and kept on labouring for a little bit longer. But she came out, she was healthy and wonderful and fantastic. And all in all, it was a lovely birth, but I definitely felt that with our next pregnancy, I really wanted to avoid any intervention at all. So I went hardcore into the birth prep. From the second I found out I was pregnant, and then I found out I was having 2, which turned everything on its head somewhat.
Yeah.
Because the birth prep is quite quite different when there's two. You face a lot more of the sort of traditional constraints of birth. So there is a very high induction rate, cesarean rate, all of that sort of stuff. The idea of having a physiological birth was alien to pretty much every care provider that I spoke to. And we did end up having an elective cesarean section, but the original plan was to have a physiological birth. They just ended up having some growth issues, and so we chose to have a cesarean and have control of that. And again, that's something that I was able to do through what I'd learnt from Birthbox about using my brain, making those informed decisions, what was right for us, and sort of taking back the control. And we had music playing, meditations playing. One of the things that I really struggled with leading up to their birth was desperately wanting this natural, physiological, intervention-free birth. And it took me a very long time to get my head around the fact that that might be a lot more difficult than I wanted it to be. However, I used the meditations every night because I was quite anxious. I was using ones for sleeping and connecting with the babies and all of that sort of stuff, and found that as we got closer, it was becoming easier to kind of amalgamate all of the different tools to create a birth that still felt like that really natural, lovely experience, even though we were probably going to have a more medicalized route.
How do you feel that Birthbox shifted your mindset towards birth?
I think the first time round, for sure, Birthbox shifted my mindset towards birth in showing me that you actually had control in your birth space, which I just didn't know was a thing. You know, you see on TV women labour, waters break, gush on the floor, rush to hospital, on a bed, that's it, job done. And I didn't know that it would be any different to that. And I learned so much through all the different elements of Birthbox, but knowing that you could say no to things, knowing you didn't have to have vaginal examinations, knowing how to actually utilise consent and what informed consent looked like, how to utilise your birth partner. That was a really big one as well. I think, you see birth as just being about you, and birth partners don't often get involved. And certainly the second time around, we had a doula, which was an amazing thing. And I wish we'd done that the first time. And that really helped, having that other person there to advocate for you in that moment. Because my experience the first time, there were things towards the end where I feel like I didn't advocate for myself as well as I should have, and absolutely understand it was because of the situation I was in. You're in labour and you're exhausted and there's only so much you can do, and having that other person there to advocate for you is amazing. But I think Birthbox just really shifted my mentality on what labour is, and that it can be empowering. Oh, okay. That it can be empowering, and that it changes you from the inside out. And like I said, it's kind of turned me into a bit of a birth nerd now.
Were you the type of person that would utilise meditation as...
No.
Yeah, okay. Because this is really what I try and get across to people, because I was the same when I did hypnobirthing. It was completely new to me, and I almost thought, you know what, I'm going to park that side of the course because that's for those people, and I'm just going to do the head work.
Yeah.
And, the more and more I learned about birth, the more I started to understand that actually meditation is the most important part of the prep, right? It's like one step inwards is like 1,000 steps outwards. It's the inner work that we need to do. So talk to me about your experience from going from someone who didn't meditate and to someone who sounded like you really used it as an anchor.
Yeah, so the whole idea of meditation, I always thought was a bit, a bit frivolous and whatever, and I wanted to learn the stuff and have the information and the tools. But actually, I am someone that very much gets in my head about things, and utilising those meditations, having somebody give words to things that I didn't know I was feeling or thinking, or speaking things over me that are really calming and relaxing, I just found to be quite transformative. I'm not someone that necessarily takes space for myself very often. So it was really good to take that time with the girls. I started sleeping in the room that I was going to have the girls in, with the cot next to me. And I would go in there and I would turn off the lights. I'd put some aromatherapy on, get my eye mask, and I would lay and I would listen to a meditation and then just drift off to sleep. And quite often I wouldn't even hear half of it because I would have fallen asleep in the middle of it. But I would know that I had drifted into this lovely sense of just relaxation. And I genuinely found it helped. I wasn't getting kind of bad dreams, and my stress levels were dropping. I also found using them in the bath to be really great. I love a bath. That's my safe space. So I would go and have a lovely long bath pretty much every day towards the end, because I had a big bump. Every day I lay in the bath with some Epsom salts and just listen to these meditations.
What would you say to someone who is thinking about getting BirthBox but might be on the fence?
I would say that you should absolutely buy BirthBox if you're unsure. It will change your view of birth. It will change your view of parenting and motherhood. It will change your view of relationships, your relationship with your partner and your birth partner, which I think is a really important and underutilized tool. That other person, who doesn't have to be your significant other either, you know, it can be a doula or a friend. I think there are so many women and birthing people who go into the journey of birth assuming it will all just happen and come to you without any understanding or any knowledge. And I don't think there's any other thing as life-altering as having a family, having a child, that you would enter into without doing any work or any research or any preparation. And I've done 3 or 4 different actual birthing courses because I am now a birth nerd. And BirthBox is the one that I felt has encompassed everything. I would say it's a toolkit. I don't think you have to do it in the way that you would traditionally do a online hypnobirthing course. And I think a course like BirthBox can really help you to understand that sometimes things just don't go the way that you want them to go, even if you do all the things, and that you haven't failed, and that every step of the way you can change your mind. And that's something that you talk about a lot. Every step of the way you can change what you want to do. Like I said, I desperately wanted this physiological spontaneous labor. When that wasn't going to be the case, was like, okay, how can I be empowered here now to make new choices? How can I use my brain? What can I do? What can I implement?
Thank you so much, Charlie. Oh, it's been amazing to actually meet you in person.